the floor over to Gideon. Hey, Zep, I see the TEC record bot in here. Are we also recording it video, or is it just going to be recorded audio? Okay, so cool. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, like the TC recorded is just Bear on another desktop and he's on his phone.
Cool. All right. Off to you, Gideon.
Okay. Thanks, Tam. So before I jump in, I just wanted to say a little bit about my role today. I'm actually going to be trying to wear two hats. And the first one is like a facilitator hat, so like trying to help us all achieve some type of like consensus reality about like the plan, like the way forward with our money. So, and then the other is like, as a community leader, like you all, I have some opinions, and I have some opinions in particular about the Sampo stuff, the Sampo strategy. So what I'm going to try to do is just like keep these separate as best I can. So I'm going to start with like just like that second role, like presenting us kind of like a strategic frame that we talked about in the Sampo group, got some initial feedback on. So I want to like share that with you all, and then shift to a conversation about, in particular, like how do we deal with the shrinking common pool, and how does that affect the way that we spend money going forward? So that's what I'd like to, because I think that's the thing that's like most pressing right now, and we're starting to run up against some issues around that, right? And then what I'd like to do is I've got this tool that I'd like to share with you all that is just like a way for us to get like a quick take on what everybody's thinking about this stuff. There's some specific questions in there, and I'll kind of walk you through that. It's pretty simple. And then I'll just end by sharing my own opinion. Like I'm going to try to keep my opinion out of it in the beginning just to facilitate, and then I'll share my thoughts at the end with some closing actions. Does that sound good to everybody? Sound all right? Okay, cool. So I am going to share my screen, and so the first question is this readable to everybody or not? Do I need to do anything to make this a little bit better?
A little bit of zoom would make it. I mean, it's readable, but would be better with a little. Yeah, this is perfect.
Is that better? Okay, let's try that. So, actually, I feel like a lot of the people who are here, not everybody, but a lot of the people who are here, it's too bad, because actually a lot of the people who are here were in Sampo. So some of you have already seen this. But there are a couple of people who have not. So I'm going to go through it anyway. So one of the basic frames in this, and the way that I've been seeing this is that, the TEC is not just like a company. We created our own microeconomy. And so I think it's important for us to think of it in those terms, and like from a lens of economic development, right? So it's like from that lens, we can think of our strategy going forward in terms of like phases. And so what I'm positing here is that there's like an initial phase that we're in right now, which is really about economic security. And in some ways, this kind of maps to like the Maslow hierarchy of needs, so like at the beginning, we're really just like trying to keep the door open and keep things running, right? But then at a certain point, if we make the right investments, we will start to build some economic momentum. Things will start to we'll start to gel. We'll be creating value, and we'll start to be compensated for that value. And then once that gets going fast enough, once that momentum builds, we'll be generating some economic abundance. And so this is kind of like, in a way, the analogy is like a kite, right? It's like in the first phase of flying a kite, it kind of sucks because you're just so focused on trying to keep it off the ground. Like you're trying to keep it up in the air, and you're not doing fancy tricks or anything like that. You're just trying to like get some lift. And so that's kind of like where we are right now. I would argue is that, the strategies need to be about reducing risk, reducing spending, but being really careful about the spending we do, not being afraid to spend, but when we spend on things that build our capacity. And then, as the kite starts to go up higher, we get a little bit more freedom. Hopefully we're building some services that are creating value for users of the commons, and that is creating some synergies that then, just get things moving faster and faster in terms of like a flow of value. And finally, the kite's way up in the sky, and it's like we've got lots of room to maneuver. We don't have to worry about it crashing back down. We can do like really cool stunts and all kinds of things that are there to to help us express our mission. So that's the economic development lens. The second lens on this whole thing is this coming back to like, what is the value? What is the resource that's at the center of this commons, of the token engineering commons? And Gregory Landua and other people too have had some interesting kind of ways of looking at this question of value and framing it in terms of different types of capital. And so I think that that's a useful lens for us in terms of building capital over time. And I just picked 4. Gregory has like 8 different types. There's lots of different ways of looking at this, but I picked 4 just to simplify. One is cultural capital, which we have in abundance in the TEC. The other is financial capital, which we've been really lucky. Actually, our financial capital is pretty amazing because it didn't come with like all these strings attached, right? It didn't come with VC, dictating the terms. Like we set the terms, right? We set the parameters. So that's super cool and very rare. Then the third one is like social capital. So the power of relationships. Talk about that in a sec, the different types of relationships that we're likely to develop over time. And then finally, expertise capital, which I think is the heart of where we want to go. And what this slide is showing right here is basically, this is the perspective of kind of where we are. We start with cultural capital. That's like our greatest strength. It's like, it's what's so unique about this entity, this community. And then over time, we use our financial capital and our social capital to move towards expertise. This is kind of like a lens that has to do with the types of stakeholders who are involved in the TEC. And so a lot of our focus to date has been on builders, like how do we, or contributors, right? How do we pull people in and get people engaged, and how do we, compensate them, and how do we organize ourselves, and how do we do it in a way that's not like an old bureaucracy, right? We also have spent a lot of time thinking about the role of governance, like really cool tools for doing that. The thing that's kind of, I would argue, new, this is a stakeholder set that we haven't really focused on yet, is users. So who are the people who are really going to use the Schelling point that we're in the process of building? Who are those people? And really, what are the services that they're going to be using as they interact with the TEC? So, sorry, I got to shrink this one down a little bit. So what this all suggests is kind of like a high-level theory of change for how we build our capital over time. And what I'm suggesting here is that the thing that we are really rich and strong in is our culture. I could go into the details there, but I think everybody knows, the cultural build that we did, and it was happening way before I got here, is a pretty amazing thing. And I think it's part of why we were able to raise the money that we were able to raise. Interesting thing about this particular form of capital is it's very fungible. Like we can use it to buy other types of capital. So we can use it to grow the number of people who are affiliating with us, and and deepen. So there's different types of social ties, social capital. But the other thing that we can use this for is to develop a set of services, expertise, token engineering expertise, that will be, I think, the thing that will pull users more and more into the TEC. And so the expertise, not going to go into a whole bunch of detail, but what that looks like in the document, there's a document I'll send out at the end, but there's basically two types of expertise that I'm talking about here. One is expertise that's embedded in people. So that's learning. That's the Token Engineering Academy. And then the other kind is token engineering expertise that's embedded in software or in writing, right? It's like, that's the kind of thing that you can automate and you can scale to serve many, many people. And so that will be over time some of the types of services that I hope that we'll be able to start exploring. There's only two more slides. This is basically showing this idea that this pie chart of our types of capital, actually, once we start this spinning, once these things start to bleed into each other and we've got financial capital being spent on more cultural capital, on social capital, on expertise capital, the thing starts to actually spin like a flywheel, right? And so this is the economic momentum part, where there's like synergy that starts to build between these different types of capital, and we're intentionally investing not just in these types of capital, but in the synergy that between them, right? And finally, this just is kind of sums it up. I think that what this suggests is that if we're really careful about our investment, the money that the financial money, the financial capital that we have right now, conserving it and being very strategic about how we invest it in building social capital. So, bringing people in and figuring out how to engage them in meaningful relationships that build, services and that are in line with the mission. And then we build the services that build our expertise capital. That will be the thing that will build the economic momentum that then will eventually lead to economic abundance. Okay, end present mode. I'm going to stop there for a moment. What I'm going to suggest is that rather than comment or have a discussion about this, at the end, I'll send out a link to the document. And I think you can all just use the document as a way to do async commenting on the document. Some of you have already done it. I think a better use of our time today is a conversation about how we deal with the shrinking Commons Pool fund right now, and what that does to the way that we spend our money and invest our money. And so that's the question that I'd like to open up to everybody is, as the Common Pool shrinks, do we need to make any changes in the way that we spend money? And if so, how? So, anybody care to start?
I can start. And because for me, we don't need to worry so much about this thing because the conviction voting is doing it for us. So eventually, proposals are being harder to pass, and the proposals that are passing are the ones that the community agree most on. So this shrinking on expenses is something like the conviction voting is doing by itself. So I'd rather focus on creating abundance and not so much on the expenses, because again, the commons is going to do it by itself eventually. So yeah.
Bert?
I can go ahead. I totally agree with the Zepti as conviction voting is doing some sort of reduction job. Also, while I was thinking about, I think TC's burn rate is not immense compared to other organizations that are contributing in. So I think in terms of spending, we have kind of a, let's say, healthy approach. We are not overspending, I believe. At least I feel like, but I'm wondering about opinions as well. I think, as Zepti said, we can focus on creating abundance and creating like maybe utility for our token, or like as we have discussed many times, like we can create service, etc. And since in the beer market, having these kind of revenue generations will help a lot. At least in TC's context, maybe more, because since we have like a bonding curve economy, like we have kind of more problems of dumping since we have like early buyers of the curve. So yeah, like my thoughts are on that level, I believe.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Any other thoughts on this?
I guess I just want to share one thing, and it's maybe something Eduardo and I were thinking about when we were doing like looking at the Communitas budget again, and perhaps if the Stewards working group funding proposal doesn't pass, we'll have to do with Stewards too. Is I think focusing on essential, like really essential roles that produce value and essential expenditures that produce value. I think all of the working groups should take time to, all of the new funding proposals should be coming online soon. So I think every working group should really focus on like measurable value that the funding will be providing for the community.
Thanks. Griff?
I would echo basically exactly what Tam said. I don't think it's necessarily about reducing spending as much as it is focusing the spending. We don't want to have an awesome project and be like, well, yeah, it would make a profit, but just don't have the money. Like it should really be more about like how does this money that is spent actually go towards making the TEC as an economically viable, and really push that. Push that question a little harder.
Yeah. So my 2 cents. Hello, everyone. My 2 cents on this. It's pretty similar to what Griff said in the last part. I got reached back by Peter from Upala, and he asked if the funding is still available for projects, and he replied this. He asked me this yesterday, and I haven't replied because I was waiting for this council to give him a proper reply, because it's like, do we have funding actually to fund an Upala project or any other project that applies to this? So is this kind of sustainability debt spiral? We fund our our working groups to be able to keep going, but also we need to sort of fund projects that are that will advance stock engineers, or I don't know. I will love any insight on this, and how do we answer this, or any other proposal that may come during this time, and how do we deal with that? It's a question that I have at the moment.
Yeah, some thoughts in the line of the working group funding too. I think we created some giants, and giants move very slow. So we have this like very big proposals for a lot of things that are going to happen inside of a working group, and we lose track a little bit of the dynamics of how they're happening, and we're also blocking other people from their like agency and bureaucracy capacity to propose something else on a similar line or purpose. So I think it would be interesting if we start to like slowly move into restructuring the role of a steward and understanding what does the stewardship pays for, and what are other things that are happening in the working groups that could be proposed as small projects. And maybe they have like a 5K budget or a 3K budget, and then we have a lot of this like very fast and more dynamic proposals in conviction voting. We would probably have more activity in conviction voting too, and have more awareness of the impact the funds we are investing are giving us. And maybe this would also reflect on token engineering projects. If we have more projects that propose a short-term impact, that maybe we can visibly see how this affects the token price, or how many people are entering, joining the commons, what is the awareness this is creating to token engineering. I think this would bring a lot more movement to everything.
Thanks, Livia. That's great. So let me build on that and ask another that's a related question to that. So yeah, we're seeing with the Stewards funding proposal, it's moving slow. It's hard. It's hard to pass big projects right now, right? So it seems like one path is to what you're describing, Livia, is break them up into smaller projects. Another is to do a lot more active vote herding, like going out and like doing like kind of what you do, Griff, like you help like move things along, cat herd. Do we need to do more of that? Do we need to like set that up as like some specific thing that we're doing? Do we need to do Griff and I talked a little bit about like working with the whales. Like in some cases they can make a huge impact on that, but also we need to be careful not to overwhelm them, right, with like a bunch of requests. So I'll just open that up as kind of a line of question.
To that point, would some sort of quasi political structure emerge for delegates in terms of kind of a camp of this type of thinking or a camp of this type of thinking, and lobby the whales or whoever else might hold tokens to support or follow this type of thinking? Or is that something that would be an ideal for some reason? I mean, that could emerge naturally, but would we want to directly emerge? We want to cause that to take place at some point.
Well, another point for having smaller proposals is that we wouldn't have to do so much cat herding, because less people would be required to vote on proposals for them to pass. And I feel like this would filter the interests of the community. Like whoever is interested in a certain area will have more voice on that just by being active and paying attention on that. And then if there is eventually a big proposal, people are not like feeling drained for having to participate in everything. We could direct more the categories of proposals to people's interests and areas of attention.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to reiterate. I second Livia's thoughts. It's really an intelligent way to go. Smaller proposals, leaner, meaner.
I will just say that I support the idea of the smaller proposals. At the same time, that will require commitment from us to sort of build more consistency in our relationship with token holders. That it's barely existing at the moment. So I think token holders as not the people who comes here daily. Like they're all the peoples besides that, I guess. There is 283 or probably more by this time hatchers, and there is not much relationship with them. We don't. So it's a bit, for me, it gives me certain level of discomfort to certain point to be hurting people toward small proposals or any kind of proposal by that mean, when we are not actually building anything else for them. It's like, yes, it's a philanthropical probably approach. We still need to build, and we still need some time in order to achieve what we want to achieve. But I think some conversations with them or some kind of clarification about this will be helpful to this relationship. And yeah, so I'm just like sort of hesitant on this cut herding, because everyone likes the idea of cut herding and everyone sort of supports that idea, but when it comes to execution, that doesn't happen quite often. And when it's consistency about that, that's where we sort of need a commitment from wider people to commit to the idea that this will be constant. If we need to pass how many more working groups in order for for the next month, so that will demand. And if we divide that by small proposals, it will be 12, 20 proposals. And then that means every time you need to cut her people. So that generates certain level of, when you turn off notifications because you have too many notifications, kind of vibe, kind of mood. So how do we contrast that? And I feel that it's by building certain level of relationship with that holder, so he doesn't feel that we are using them, and we only like, oh, it's just when we require them, then we talk to you, kind of vibe.
Also, to add on to the conversation and with all of these ideas, I was thinking, and this is an idea that I had like since the beginning that I came here, that I started noticing. Maybe it would be worth it to consider having all the working groups funded, like at once, to have them have like a fixed, let's say, budget, maybe based on what we have in the commons pool. So, for example, each working group will have a budget of 30K, 40K for, I don't know, 3-6 months. And that's going to be for all the working groups. And then with that budget, every working group can start working on their different, let's say, roadmap or proposals. But once they already have like this money available. So it's just like funding working groups like in advance, and then allowing them to organize and to plan according to that budget. Then that way, I think it would be easier to track expenses, because then we have like a bigger view of like the coming months of how much money is being used across the working groups. And then we can do like an audit or some kind of review after that period and see if the whole resources were used, or how many proposals were delivered, or what was the progress in each of the working groups. So I don't know, that's just an idea.
I don't think that makes sense. Like, not all the working groups have the same needs. And we already, like, conviction voting itself, it's, people is doing a budget, and then we have like the forum to reach like milestones, and we already have an audit to see like how proposals are doing. So again, I really don't think like all the working groups should get the same amount of money. That doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, I think it would be interesting because, for example, you could give them like the same amount of money, but maybe for one group, they will allow them to operate for 3 months or 6 months. But maybe for another one, it will allow them to operate for a year or even more, right? Depending on their needs and depending on their operations. Because something I see is that there are some working groups and there's some work happening on the working groups. I can think about Omega, for example. There's a lot of work going on there, and for example, they don't have a budget, they don't have funds for their group to start like paying to that people that are already operating. They have the funds for the Consilience Library project that is really specific, but not, the group is not funded as a whole. So in this case, maybe they could start, having a more room to start paying their contributors, and maybe based on their needs, like what you're saying, Septi, they will take maybe 1 year to finish the funds, and that would be okay.
Yeah, but what they should just make a proposal, and doesn't have to be the same for all the working groups. They should do a budget if it's what they need. And
I mean, maybe they could start doing proposals more based on like projects, and not like asking for money like for every single proposal. That's kind of like the thing that would be kind of trying to avoid, like asking money for every single project, every single proposal. I mean, you submit the proposal in the forum, goes through advice process and everything, but the working group already has the funds, and they already plan this proposal, this project based on the funds that they have. So it's kind of like reducing into this smaller scope, like all the planning and all the operating of the project. I think it's easier for people to plan based on what they already have available than trying to predict how much money will they use to complete what they are proposing.
Like what Libby was saying about having smaller proposals and projects for the proposals adds accountability. Like what you are suggesting, it actually removes accountability. Like I have funds. Oh, I have funds there. Maybe I just spend on those, and in my opinion, add more inefficiency. Like, oh, I have money, I have to spend it somewhere. But if you think the other way around, like, okay, I want to build this, and in order to build this, I need this amount of money. And I think this adds efficiency and also accountability.
There's
The accountability would be with every proposal, right? Like you would still need to submit proposals and milestones and a roadmap for every single project that you submit, right? That would stay the same.
Hey guys, I'm going to interrupt for just 1 minute on this, just because I think we've identified in this case what the issue is, and we can. I'm gonna take notes on this, and we can follow up. So let's see if we can shift a little bit. Tam, did you have something?
I just want to add just one thing. Blossom Labs is working on something called osmotic funding for recurring direct expenses, and it essentially solves this exact problem-ish. So I don't know where it is in terms of readiness. It was like a hackathon project, so I think it's probably a few months away. But there may be a more, I would say, technical solution that we could use that would allow funding to working groups to sort of shift osmotically based on what the community is feeling the working groups are performing the best, for lack of a better way to express that.
Can I ask a question? I don't know if this has been asked on Sampo or not. And I'm sorry, and I apologize if it is a repetitive question. What will happen in the eventuality that after Stewards there is no possibility to pass any other working group proposal? Like what will we be doing? Like what is the plan B? What is the what we're gonna do if that happens? Yes, Stewards may pass, but if any other working group doesn't pass, what is the plan?
I want to answer what Tam was talking before, and the last new I know is like probably Gitcoin is funding osmotic funding. So yeah, probably we'll have it before then, when we expect it.
Before when is that?
It's before we it might come before than we all expect, since probably Gitcoin is going to fund it.
So let's go back to this question that Edu's asking, because I think it's really important, and I'm even going to wrap it a little bit bigger. What role, if any, should the stewards play in helping to shape our spending pattern, right? Should this just be left to the community to decide through conviction voting, and maybe we just get stuck and then we'll have to respond? Or and I'm not advocating either one of these, but I'm asking this question to try to get your opinions. The other response would be to say that the stewards are coming together and saying, you know what, these are some of the things that we think are the greatest sources of value that will build value over time. So let's try to really focus on passing those proposals, right? These are, one's completely hands off, the other is more proactive. Thoughts on that?
I honestly think it's up to the community. Like the community should fund whatever they want to fund. Like as a token holder, everyone have the agency to vote on what they want, and the sum of everything is what will make the road of what we're funding and what we don't.
And then what is the role of leadership? I mean, obviously there's a lot of abstentions and they need some assistance, some help at understanding what's going on at the most granular level. So what help do you give a voter to say this is the information that you need and these are the people that have the best view as to what is required going forward?
Mark?
I actually I agree with the Zepti. So I think the funding power should be in the hands of the community. What's the role of leadership here is that I believe since stewards are the legitimate leaders, we assume, so they may raise their concerns. Like for example, I saw lots of voter guides in the Gitcoin DAO, so they were like suggesting and reasoning how they are voting for the new budgets, new season budget. So, for example, stewards can come up with those kind of ideas and advocate in the community. So this may affect community's opinion, but I don't think there should be like hard power for stewards to impose certain pattern.
Yeah, and stewards already have like their reputation, and normally what stewards are suggesting, more people is reading into, like it's easier for stewards to pass proposal based on the reputation than someone that do not have any reputation, and I think that's where the leadership plays out, and that's it. Like the rest is decision of the token holders, my opinion.
So, sorry if I'm being pragmatic on this, but I feel we're having a high level conversation, and I still don't have even a suggestion of an answer to my question. And I know it's part of the answer when you ask it in, but I feel this high level conversation is interesting, but there are a practical aspect to it that we sort of I would like to have a conversation too, not only about the high level part.
So Eddie, do you want to, I think your question was, what do we do if we can't pass any proposals, right?
Correct.
So anybody have any thoughts on that?
In my opinion, what doesn't pass is something like the community don't want to fund, so it should be stopped doing it or doing it voluntarily.
I think, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Edu is talking also about some type of work security, of like how people are being compensated by the effort they are putting in the TEC. And then if proposals stop passing for funding the working groups, what's going to happen with the work streams that are ongoing and the people that are committed and are somehow expecting to have a compensation from there? Is that more or less what you're asking into?
Yes, and also for rewards, and also for our mission for funding proposals at advanced stock engineering. Like, I feel like we will hit a limbo sort of a status where we won't be able to move and rely on basically the goodwill of people who will want to keep trusting the project, who will be a lot probably. But it's still like this conversation of, okay, is that a tough conversation to have? Or that's a tough situation that will come if this doesn't offer any other solution. That's good, but let's be aware that this may happen and how we prepare to that.
Yeah, so I'll just finish something and pass you, Mark. Sorry. That's why I was bringing up in SoftGov the importance of having some type of like a boundary or a commitment letter for every individual in terms of compensation. Like, what would be like if X happened, I can't commit anymore, or unless Y is provided, I can't commit anymore. So having those boundaries clear for everyone in terms of the work you've been putting in the TEC, I think it would be very important. And then once we have that a little more clear to communicate, and what Gideon and I were talking about was like, how can we provide this type of letter, like from the TEC to the community too? Like, what can the TEC provide to its people right now? And maybe if we have a path, like what is building on Sampo, a path where like, oh, we have this 3 initiatives that might bring income, and this is the roadmap of them, and this is the expecting like revenue we have planned, and this would safeguard this and this work that is happening. So all of this kind of needs to happen simultaneously, I think, for us all to be aligned.
Thank you, Levi. Just quickly, and pass it to you, Mert. Sorry, I'm so sorry, Mert, to interrupt you. Yeah, I think something along those lines will be healthy for everyone. Just because for me the big picture would be if we hit that wall, then it's not that we fail as an economy, but there is this tough conversation of if a token engineer community sort of fail to foresee how to be sustainable for their own contributors, that's something that I it will sort of make weird. Yeah, it's a weird context to have. Like if us as a token engineering community who want to be a shilling point for token engineers, we fail to our contributors to be able to create a sustainable economy, how do we expect to sort of, I don't think I have to explain further, but this is where my thoughts came from. Mert, all yours. Sorry.
So no problem at all, Edo. So what I was thinking, I think what Livia said was very important. So we can think really about some mechanisms such as universal basic income in the midst of a crisis. So we can define the crisis situation maybe, so we can play it around, I believe. But for the other thing, like what will happen if we cannot pass proposals because the quorum is so high due to lower treasury? I think it's kind of showing that as a autonomous or agents within DAO, we should work on increasing common pool. So it's like if we are autonomous agents, and now we are doing it actually, so it's very good. Maybe one can criticize us saying that this started very late, so that's why you are having this pain point. But at the end, we said, okay, we find that problem and we are working for it. So, if, for example, if we stopped funding the proposals, some may say, "Oh, this has failed." Some may say, "Okay, but the community just find the pain point and working for it. Maybe they wanted to work for the cause." But at that point, maybe we can offer some sort of universal basic income, people who don't have like means of living. But I mean, as an autonomous agent, the responsibility on us. So and we are working for it. So I think the focus should be on like how to make it faster and more effective.
So we have just maybe 5 more minutes. I also like in 5 minutes. What I'm going to do is point you to this this URL where we can just do a quick just check on where everybody is, because I'd like to capture that. So 5 more minutes of conversation. Welcome, Mitch. We're talking about does this shrinking common pool, how does that affect the way that we spend money and the way that we think about spending money?
Cool.
So come back to one other question. External projects that are not internal operating projects. Do we think any differently about them, or is this just the same? Do we just treat them the same? No.
I think all projects should be considered external, including our own working groups. Like that would be ideal. I mean, if every project was the same. I mean, it's like this is the magic. I feel like that's the decentralization approach. Every project is its own, and they're all competing on conviction voting for what the token holders want. Oh, I missed it. This is actually a vote. Okay, cool. My bad.
Oh, no, it's not. No, that's totally fine. Actually, so look on the text channel for Stewards. There's a link there. and you'll see it's like a little Twitter-like statement, and you just click agree, disagree, or pass. You're not sure. And, as you're going along, if you think that's not quite how I sort of agree with that statement, but that's not how I do it, you can actually add your own statement down below. And that will be something that other people will be able to vote on. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Take a few minutes to just go through that. And when you're done, if you can just signal, wave that you're done, so I can get a sense of that.
What do you mean by capacity building?
Yeah, so that is basically investments that raise our ability to increase value over time. And also, if there's a question that you think should be in here, a statement that you think is missing, go ahead and add that too.
Done, Gideon.
Okay, how's everybody doing? How much more time do you need? Everybody done or need a couple more minutes?
4 questions left for me.
Sorry, I didn't hear your answer of the capacity building. What did you mean about that?
So capacity building is making investments that are specifically focused on raising our ability to add value over time. Rather than just say operations can be that too, but this is more like investments that grow our capacity to add value.
I'm done too.
Everybody, okay. How's everybody else doing?
Done.
Done. Septi's done. Mitch, you're done.
Complete.
For those of you who are finished, I'm gonna just show you something that's kind of cool. So basically, this is an example of a report. This tool is very cool, actually. I ran across it. Kevin Owaki was interviewing Glenn Weil on the Green Pill podcast, and Kevin asked Glenn, what's your favorite tool? What's the thing that everybody should be looking at right now? And he said, Polis, for sure, Polis. So this is basically a sample report of like a very big community. And you can see that basically this is looking at these different statements. And I'll just highlight this. So over here, you see clusters of statements that there was pretty much consensus on. Either people all agreed or they all disagreed. And then over here, you have like a statement that's like just divisive to the community. Okay, so and then it breaks out so you can see each one of these statements, like the kind of the overall sentiment. So let's not dive into that too much right now, but I think that this tool has a lot of potential for us for assessing just kind of like the general sentiment in our community. So, okay, so everybody pretty much done at this point with the survey? Yeah? Okay. What if I could, I'd like to just share some of my thoughts just in closing, and then maybe some next steps. Because I mean, this is going to be a decision that we're going to have to, like if we make no decision, then there's one opinion that was expressed in here, which is like making no decision is a decision, right? The conviction voting will basically just carry on, and that's the decision, right? If we decide to do another one, then it's going to be a little bit of work to figure out what that other option is. My take is that I feel like we do need a shift in focus. Like we really do need to think about how we as a community want to invest in creating value, right? For this commons, for this mission. Are we really doing it the very best way that we can be right now? Is there waste in our budgets? I think that there is, personally. I mean, I don't know what it is, right? But I feel like there are always ways that we can get more focused on the mission. And I think that it's time, for us to go after that and really think about that. Like, what does that mean for us? If we really are building like an attractor, like a Schelling point for bringing token engineering professionals together, what does that really look like? How do we define who those users are of these services that we're going to be building? Who are these people exactly? Like, in order to know what's going to be valuable to them, we have to understand who they are. And so I feel like there are some risks of just kind of like being laissez-faire about this. If we're not careful, we could lose, if we run out of funding for the people who are gathered around the builders right now, we might lose people. I mean, we really could lose a bunch of people. And if that happens, if people can't afford to stay here because proposals aren't passing or they're so small when they pass, some people will end up making other plans, and that could actually set us back. So that's the thing that I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about like, how do we as a community make sure that we're, this isn't about cutting people. Like, it may be just more about redeploying and thinking about how we want people to engage, the kinds of things we want to engage, and being a lot sharper about this kind of Livius. It's like being a lot sharper about the proposals that we're putting together and making sure that we are just being really focused on creating value and defining that. So I guess as last steps, I would encourage you, it'd be great if that document, I'm going to share this document about like the kind of the Sampo's frame for thinking about how we create value. But I do think that is a question that we really need to come to some consensus on is there some agreement on the kinds of value that we really want to be creating, investing in, focusing on in this next stretch, especially as the financial capital is getting tighter. So I'll send that out. I'll put it in the Stewards channel. And yeah, it'd be great if you can comment in that. And then I will take all of this feedback and I'll take the results of the poll that we all just and try to get something back to you all in the next couple of days, like by early next week, to just kind of see what kind of consensus there actually was here. Okay? Tough. This is actually a tough. I think this is a really tough conversation, and I don't know what the answer is yet, but I think that over this next week or so, we've got to like come to some conclusions about how we decide to. So thank you for everybody hanging in there and for all the good opinions. And yeah, Tam, do you have anything else you want to?
I just have one question. So I've been adding some things to that Polis. I've been adding some statements. Should we just be adding some of our own personal statements there regarding this topic?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll go ahead. I'm now seeing a bunch of them in there, so I'll just accept all of those, and that'll show up in the next round. And we should just talk about if we want this poll to go out any further, or if we want to do anything else with something like this. Does that sound good?
Thank you so much, Gideon. Thanks for this presentation today, and thanks everyone else for joining.
Thanks, Gideon. That was great.
Update your slides. Update your slides.
Thanks, Tam.
Thank you, Gideon.
Thank you, everybody.
See you later.
Someone, can you see my message?